Chapter 1 Whispers in the dark. The night was unusually silent in the small town of Greywood. The streets, normally bustling with late-night wanderers and echoing with distant laughter, were eerily quiet, as if the town itself was holding its breath. In the old Whitaker house, perched at the edge of town where the woods began to thicken, Emma Thompson struggled to find sleep. Her parents had gone on their second honeymoon, leaving her alone in the grand old house that had been in the family for generations. At 17, Emma was no stranger to being home alone, but tonight, something felt off. As the clock struck midnight, a cold breeze swept through her room, sending shivers down her spine. She sat up, clutching the blanket closer, and listened. There it was again, a whisper, barely audible, like a secret being murmured through the walls. Emma's heart raced as she strained her ears to catch the words, but they slipped away, swallowed by the silence that once again enveloped the room. She tried to dismiss it as her imagination, a trick of the mind fueled by the horror movies she had watched earlier. But as she lay back down, the whispers returned, louder this time, urgent. They seemed to be coming from downstairs. With a deep breath, Emma slipped out of bed and crept toward the staircase, each step creaking under her weight like a cautionary whisper. As she reached the landing, the whispers grew clearer, forming into a voice, a child's voice, crying out from the living room. "Help me, please." The plea was so full of despair that Emma couldn't ignore it. She hurried downstairs, her heart pounding in her ears. The living room was dark, the only light coming from the moon casting long shadows across the floor. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a palpable silence. "Hello." Emma's voice trembled as she flicked on the light switch. The room remained dark, the power was out. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and her breath fogged in the air. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, backing away as a figure slowly materialized in front of the fireplace, a little boy, no older than 10, with hollow eyes and a pale, translucent skin. "I can't find my mommy," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the silent room. Before Emma could respond, a loud crash from the kitchen made her jump. The boy vanished as if he had never been there. Heart racing, Emma grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and moved towards the kitchen. The door creaked as she pushed it open, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the darkness. Glass lay shattered on the floor, the window above the sink broken. A cold wind blew through the opening, carrying a foul, rotten smell. Emma gagged, covering her mouth. That's when she heard it, a slow, deliberate scratching coming from the basement door. She froze, flashlight beam fixed on the basement door as the scratching grew louder, more desperate. With every fiber of her being screaming to run, she found herself drawn towards the sound, her hand reaching for the doorknob. Chapter 2 Footsteps in the hall. As Emma's fingers touched the cold metal of the knob, the scratching stopped. Silence hung heavily in the air, thick and foreboding. Emma held her breath, listening, waiting. Then, from somewhere deep within the house, footsteps thudded on the wooden floor. Heavy, dragging steps coming closer. Emma quickly stepped back, her mind racing. She needed to call the police, but her phone was upstairs. She glanced at the basement door, now ominously silent, then bolted toward the stairs. As she ran, the footsteps grew louder, faster, as if chasing her. Reaching her room, she slammed the door shut and locked it, her hands trembling as she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. The phone rang once, twice, then fell silent as the line went dead. Emma stared at the screen in disbelief. No service. A loud bang against her door made her jump. She screamed, backing away as the banging continued, relentless. The door frame started to crack under the force, splinters of wood flying into the room. "Leave me alone," Emma shouted, searching desperately for something to defend herself with. She grabbed the heavy lamp from her bedside table, her eyes fixed on the door as it began to buckle. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the banging stopped. Emma waited, breath caught in her throat, the lamp raised like a weapon. Minutes passed, each one stretching into eternity. Then, softly, so softly she thought she might have imagined it, a voice whispered through the door. "You can't hide, Emma." Her heart skipped a beat. How did they know her name? The doorknob turned slowly, creaking as it moved. Emma tightened her grip on the lamp, her knuckles white. The door creaked open slowly, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something metallic, blood. Emma stepped back, her mind racing for a way out. She remembered the window, a possible escape route. She threw the lamp at the figure in the doorway, the shadow dodging with a speed that was almost inhuman. Taking advantage of the distraction, she rushed to the window, throwing it open and peering out. Below, the drop seemed survivable, if risky. But as she prepared to climb out, a hand grabbed her ankle, pulling her back with terrifying strength. Screaming, Emma kicked wildly, managing to break free. She tumbled out of the window, landing hard on the ground below. Pain shot through her ankle, but fear propelled her forward. She limped as fast as she could into the woods that bordered her house, the branches scratching at her face and arms as she pushed deeper into the darkness. Behind her, the footsteps continued, relentless. In the depths of the woods, the moonlight was scarce, filtered through the dense canopy above. Emma tried to listen for her pursuer but heard only her own labored breathing and the thud of her heart. Then, abruptly, the footsteps stopped. Emma froze, listening, her eyes wide as she tried to see through the darkness. A low growl echoed through the trees, close, too close. Emma's eyes darted around, searching for the source. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around her. Then she saw them, eyes, red and glowing, watching her from the darkness. She backed away slowly, her breath catching in her throat as the figure stepped into the light. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. The creature was tall and gaunt, its skin pale and stretched tight over its bones. Its mouth was a gaping maw filled with sharp, jagged teeth, dripping with what looked like blood. Emma screamed, turning to run, but her injured ankle gave out, and she fell to the ground. The creature advanced, its movements jerky and unnatural. Emma crawled backwards, her hands clawing at the dirt, her breaths ragged as she tried to put any distance between herself and the advancing nightmare. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees whispering secrets in a language of shivers down her spine. As she backed into a thick tree trunk, her hand felt something odd, a metal object partially buried in the loam. It was cold, solid, possibly a piece of an old farm tool forgotten in the woods. Gripping it tightly, she swung with all her might as the creature loomed over her. The metal connected with a sickening crunch, and for a moment, the forest was filled with the creature's unearthly howl of pain. It recoiled, giving Emma just enough time to scramble to her feet and run deeper into the woods. Her heart pounded in her ears, each thud drowning out the sounds of the forest night. She knew she couldn't run forever, especially with her ankle throbbing in protest with each step. Desperation set in as she realized that she needed to find a place to hide, to wait out the night, or to make a stand. The realization was a weight in her stomach, pulling down her hope like an anchor. As she limped through the underbrush, the glow of something in the distance caught her eye. A cabin, its windows dark, the structure old and leaning slightly but offering a potential haven. Emma's mind raced with possibilities and dangers. Could it be more secure than the open woods? Was it already a hiding place for whatever horrors lived in these shadowed trees? With no options left, she made her way to the cabin, her every step a silent prayer that the door would be unlocked. Miraculously, it was. The door creaked loudly as she pushed it open, and she winced at the sound, fearing it was a beacon to anything that hunted by sound. She slipped inside, her flashlight scanning the one-room interior, catching dust motes dancing like slow-moving stars in the beam. The cabin was abandoned, or so it seemed, furnished with only a broken table and a dusty, ragged couch that looked as if it hadn't seen use in decades. Emma closed the door softly behind her, leaning against it as she tried to catch her breath. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she could make out the outlines of a small fireplace, a pile of old newspapers, and a rusted tin can that had once held food. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. She decided to barricade the door with the table, pushing it with a grunt of effort and pain. Her flashlight flickered again, warning of dying batteries, a reminder of her fading safety. As she settled behind the table, pulling the ragged couch closer to fortify her makeshift barricade, a sound from the back of the cabin froze her blood, a soft, dragging step, followed by another, then another. Emma's flashlight beam trembled as she aimed it towards the sound. The back of the cabin was darker than the rest, a black curtain that seemed to swallow light. She held her breath, listening as the steps stopped just before what seemed like an old curtain separating the back room. Then a voice, hoarse and whispering, drifted through the silence. "Not alone, you're not alone here." Her throat tight with fear, Emma realized the cabin might have been a sanctuary, but it was also a trap. With the creature possibly still lurking outside and now this unknown presence within, she was caught between nightmares. The whisper came again, closer this time, almost a hiss, "You're never alone in the dark." Emma gripped her makeshift weapon tighter, her eyes darting around the room, searching for any other weapon, any other way out. But as her flashlight flickered one last time before dying completely, she was plunged into darkness. The last thing she heard before the light went out was the soft, terrifying assurance of company in the shadows. The darkness embraced her, a blanket woven with dread and danger, and as she sat there, waiting, listening, the story of her night of terror was far from over. As Emma sat in the enveloping darkness, her senses heightened, every small noise seemed amplified, a rustling whisper, a soft creak from the wooden beams of the old cabin, each sound a symphony of terror. Her heart pounded in her chest, a relentless drum against the quiet, a stark reminder of her perilous situation. Her hands gripped the cold metal object tightly, her knuckles white from the strain. Emma's mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other, searching for a way out, a plan, anything. But the oppressive darkness seemed to stifle her thoughts as effectively as it blinded her sight. Time stretched, warped by fear and anticipation. The silence in the cabin was broken again by the whisper, this time closer, almost at her ear. "Don't be afraid," it hissed, a sound like the wind through dead leaves. Emma's breath hitched, her body frozen in place. The voice wasn't just a voice, it had substance, as if the darkness itself had come alive and was speaking to her. The floorboards creaked softly under a weight that seemed to shift with a deliberateness that suggested intelligence and purpose. Emma felt the air stir around her, a presence moving within the pitch black. Her fingers tightened around her makeshift weapon, her only anchor in the swirling sea of dread that the cabin had become. The silence returned, thick and tangible. Emma's eyes, useless in the darkness, strained to see any hint of movement, any shape or shadow that could tell her where the voice had gone. But there was nothing, only the blackness that seemed to press against her eyes. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared from the direction of the back room. It was subtle at first, a slight lightening of the dark, a grayness amidst the black. The glow slowly intensified, revealing the silhouette of a doorway and something moving within it. Emma watched, paralyzed, as two figures emerged from the glow. They were indistinct at first, blurs of lighter gray against the dark background. As they moved closer, the details of their forms became clearer. They were children, two little girls, holding hands. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow pits of shadow, and their clothes tattered and dirty, as if they had been buried and dug themselves out of their graves. The girls stopped a few feet away from Emma, their heads cocked to the side as if listening to something she couldn't hear. Then, in unison, they spoke, their voices a chilling blend of innocence and something far older. "He's coming," they whispered, their voices echoing unnaturally in the cramped space of the cabin. Before Emma could ask who was coming, a new sound filled the cabin, a deep, guttural growling that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The ground beneath her shook, and the air grew colder, a chill that seeped into her bones. Emma stood slowly, her legs trembling. The little girls stepped backward, merging back into the glowing doorway from which they had come, their eyes never leaving Emma's. As they disappeared, the growling grew louder, closer, until it was all she could hear. Then, the darkness was broken by a new light, this one red and ominous. It flickered like fire, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. The source of the light was not fire, though, but eyes, red, glowing eyes that burned with malice and hunger. The creature from the woods had found her, its form massive and terrifying as it filled the doorway. Emma backed away, her heart racing as she searched desperately for an escape route. But there was none, the creature blocked the only way out. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth, and it advanced towards her, each step thudding heavily on the wooden floor. As the creature approached, Emma felt a surge of adrenaline. Fear morphed into determination, a resolve to survive. She gripped her weapon with both hands and waited for the creature to come within reach. The cabin was small, and it would be upon her in seconds. The creature lunged, its massive form moving with surprising speed. Emma swung her weapon with all her might, aiming for the creature's head. The metal connected with a sickening crack, and the creature reeled back, howling in pain. Emma didn't wait to see if she had injured it. She ran towards the back room, towards the grey light that still outlined the doorway. As she entered the back room, the light intensified, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. With the sound of the creature's enraged howls behind her, Emma took the stairs two at a time, her only thought to put as much distance between herself and the nightmare above. The staircase descended into the earth, the air growing cooler with each step. At the bottom, she found herself in a narrow tunnel, the walls rough and damp. Emma pressed on, her hands trailing along the cold stone, guiding her through the oppressive darkness. The only sounds were her own heavy breathing and the distant, muffled thuds of the creature trying to follow her descent. She could feel its anger vibrating through the earth itself, a relentless pursuit driven by a hunger she did not want to imagine. The tunnel seemed endless, winding deeper into the bowels of the earth. Mud squelched under her feet, and the air was thick with the smell of decay and wet earth. Every step forward was a battle against the fear that clawed at her mind, whispering that this tunnel could be her tomb. Suddenly, the narrow path opened into a larger cavern. The air inside was cooler, and the faint echo of dripping water resonated off the stone walls. Emma paused, her heart pounding in her chest, as she tried to make out her surroundings. Her eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light provided by some luminescent fungus clinging to the walls, casting a ghostly glow over the damp stone. In the eerie silence of the cavern, Emma heard a new sound, a soft sobbing, echoing hauntingly around her. Cautiously, she moved toward the sound, her senses on high alert. As she approached, the sobbing grew louder, more distinct, and she could make out a figure huddled against the far wall of the cavern. It was a woman, her clothes ragged and dirty, her hair matted and unkempt. She was rocking back and forth, her face buried in her hands, sobbing as if her heart would break. Emma approached slowly, unsure of whether the woman was a threat. "Hello." Emma's voice echoed in the cavern, startling the woman. She looked up, her eyes wide with fear, her face pale and gaunt. When she saw Emma, a flicker of recognition crossed her features, and she wiped her tears away hurriedly. "You need to get out of here," the woman whispered urgently. "It's not safe. He'll find you." Who will find me?" Emma asked, stepping closer. The woman shrank back, fear radiating from her. "The guardian of the depths," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He protects the secrets below, and he lets no one escape who has seen them." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "What secrets? What are you talking about?" Before the woman could answer, a low growl echoed through the cavern, the same chilling sound Emma had heard above. The woman's eyes widened in terror, and she scrambled to her feet. "Run!" she screamed, darting past Emma and into the darkness of another tunnel. Emma hesitated only a moment before following, her own fear propelling her forward. The tunnel sloped downward, and the sound of running water grew louder. Emma and the woman emerged beside an underground river, its waters dark and swift. The growls were closer now, almost upon them. There the woman pointed to a rough-hewn boat tied to a small dock. "Take the river. It's the only way out." Emma helped the woman into the boat, then jumped in as the creature's growls turned into roars of frustration. They pushed off from the dock, the current catching them immediately, sweeping them away into the darkness. As the boat bobbed and spun in the swift water, Emma looked back toward the shore. She could see the silhouette of the creature, massive and menacing, watching them escape. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, a promise of pursuit. Turning her gaze forward, Emma saw that the river was leading them deeper underground, the walls of the cavern closing in. The air grew colder, the sound of the water louder, and ahead, the faintest hint of light suggested the river's exit, or another, deeper mystery. As they raced through the subterranean night, Emma realized their journey was far from over. The secrets of the depths, the guardian, and the haunted caverns were all pieces of a puzzle she had unwittingly become a part of. And somewhere ahead, in the darkness, the answers waited, answers that would either lead to salvation or deeper into the heart of terror. The river carried them onward, and the shadows seemed to watch, whispering of the horrors yet to come. The river's swift current carried Emma and the mysterious woman deeper into the unknown, the walls of the cavern sometimes so close they could touch them. The light ahead grew slightly brighter, an ominous glow that did not promise safety, but at least offered a change from the oppressive darkness. "Who are you?" Emma finally asked the woman beside her, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to break the fragile truce with the silence. The woman turned, her face shadowed and drawn in the weak light. "My name is Sarah. I came here like you, running from something I didn't understand." Her eyes flickered with the reflection of the luminescent moss on the cave walls. But that was a long time ago. Emma processed this, her mind racing with questions. What is this place? Why is that creature after us? Sarah sighed, a sound mixed with fear and resignation. "This river, it runs beneath the old Whitaker mine, abandoned decades ago after a collapse that everyone thought was just a natural disaster. They were wrong. The miners had found something old and powerful, and they tried to seal it back behind tons of rock and earth." The boat rocked as the water churned around a bend, and both women clutched the sides. "That creature," Sarah continued, her voice strained over the roar of the water, "is the guardian, a sentinel for the secrets hidden in the depths. It doesn't allow anyone to explore these parts. Those who try, they don't return." Emma felt a chill that wasn't from the cold air. "And the children, the little girls?" she asked, remembering the eerie figures from the cabin. Sarah shook her head, her expression grim. "Spirits, lost and bound to the guardian. They were once like us, seekers of truth. Now they are just part of the darkness." As the conversation lulled, the light at the end of the tunnel grew more substantial, casting long shadows behind them. It seemed like an exit was near, but as they approached, the sound of the water changed, a thunderous noise filling the air. "The falls," Sarah shouted over the din, pointing ahead where the river dropped off into an abyss. "Hold on." Before Emma could respond, the boat tipped precariously as the river plummeted down a steep waterfall. They clung to each other as the boat plunged into the frothy water below, the impact knocking the air from their lungs. The boat righted itself, and they gasped for breath, soaked and shivering. Below the falls, the river calmed, and they floated into a vast underground lake, the ceiling high above them dotted with stalactites. The bioluminescent glow was stronger here, casting an eerie, otherworldly light over the water. "This place," Sarah whispered, or mixed with fear in her voice, "is the sanctuary. It's said to be the heart of the old mines, where the earth's secrets are kept." Emma looked around, mesmerized by the beauty and the terror of it. The lake was surrounded by rocky shores, on which strange symbols and carvings could be seen, glowing faintly with the same luminescent light. "What now?" she asked, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "We need to find the codex," Sarah replied, scanning the shoreline. "It's an ancient manuscript said to contain the knowledge of the mine's secrets and possibly a way to appease the guardian." As they rowed toward the shore, the sound of movement caught their attention. It wasn't the guardian, this was different, softer, more deliberate. They turned, peering into the darkness beyond the light's reach. A figure emerged, cloaked in shadow, moving towards them with an eerie grace. "Who's there?" Emma called out, her voice trembling not just from the cold. The figure stopped at the edge of the light, its features obscured. A friend, the voice came, masculine and warm, yet carrying an edge of caution. Or perhaps a foe. In the sanctuary, it is often hard to tell. Emma and Sarah exchanged a wary glance. Friends were rare in places like this, and trust was a luxury they might not afford. "Show yourself," Sarah demanded, her tone firm despite their vulnerability. The figure stepped forward, the light revealing his features, middle-aged, his face lined with experience and eyes that seemed to hold a deep sadness. "My name is Thomas," he said. "I've been searching for the codex too." Together, on the shore of that mystical underground lake, the trio made a plan. Each step brought them closer to understanding the hidden forces at play beneath the old Whitaker mine, each discovery a piece of a larger, darker puzzle. As they set out to explore the cavernous edges of the lake, their lights flickered across ancient symbols, their meanings as elusive as the shadows dancing just beyond the reach of the light. With Thomas now part of their uneasy alliance, Emma and Sarah felt a tinge of hope amidst the omnipresent dread. The trio moved along the edge of the lake, their eyes scanning the cavern walls for any sign of the elusive codex. Thomas led the way with a confidence that seemed born of familiarity. "The miners used to speak of a chamber," he explained, his voice echoing off the stone, "a sacred place where the earth's memories could be read like pages in a book. That's where we'll find the codes." As they ventured deeper, the carvings on the walls became more intricate, depicting scenes that seemed to blend natural elements with abstract symbols, perhaps indicative of the ancient forces that the miners had disturbed. The air grew cooler, and the path narrowed until they were walking single file between the rocky walls and the dark water's edge. Suddenly, Emma stopped, her hand reaching out to touch one of the symbols. It pulsed under her fingertips, warm and strangely alive. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. Sarah and Thomas leaned in, touching the glowing symbol. A shiver ran through them, an electric jolt that seemed to connect them to the very heart of the cavern. "It's a warning," Thomas muttered, pulling his hand back. "We must be close." They continued with renewed urgency, the path now leading them upward into a narrower part of the cave. The air was thick with a palpable tension, as if the very cave itself was aware of their trespass. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a large, ornate door carved into the cavern wall. It was adorned with the same symbols they had seen throughout the cave, but these were more elaborate, intertwined in a way that suggested they held the key to opening the door. "The codex must be beyond this door," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "But how do we open it?" Thomas studied the symbols, his fingers tracing the lines. "It's a puzzle," he concluded. "We need to press the symbols in the correct order." The three of them worked together, discussing the possible meanings of the symbols and their relationships to each other. After several tense minutes, they pushed the symbols in a sequence they agreed upon. The door trembled, the sound of stone grinding against stone filling the air, and then it slowly opened. Inside, the chamber was vast and filled with rows upon rows of ancient manuscripts and artifacts, preserved through the ages. At the far end of the chamber, on a stone pedestal, lay the codex, illuminated by a shaft of light that seemed to come from nowhere. They approached the pedestal with reverence. Emma reached out and gently opened the codex. The pages were made of some unknown material, and the writing on them shimmered with the same luminescent quality as the symbols outside. As Emma turned the pages, the air around them began to vibrate, a low hum that grew louder with each passing moment. Suddenly, the cavern shook violently, dust and small stones raining from the ceiling. "We need to hurry," Thomas shouted over the din. "Whatever we've awoken, it's coming." Emma quickly scanned the pages, her eyes catching on a passage that seemed to describe a ritual of appeasement, a way to calm the guardian and seal the mine once more. "Here," she yelled, pointing to the text. "We need to perform this ritual." Together, they recited the ancient words, their voices echoing through the chamber. The ground continued to shake, and they could hear the roar of the guardian approaching, its fury palpable. As they spoke the final words of the ritual, a brilliant light filled the chamber, blinding them. The shaking stopped abruptly, and silence fell. When their vision cleared, they found themselves standing in the chamber, unharmed. The codex remained on the pedestal, but the atmosphere had changed. The air was lighter, almost peaceful. "We did it," Sarah breathed, a smile breaking through her exhaustion. "We've sealed it again." But their relief was tempered by the knowledge of what lay just beyond the chamber, a dark force contained but never truly gone. As they made their way back through the caverns, the weight of their experience hung heavily upon them, a reminder of the delicate balance between seeking knowledge and provoking the forces that are better left undisturbed. As they emerged into the night air, the first light of dawn crept across the sky, casting long shadows and painting the world in hues of gold and blue. They looked back once at the entrance to the old mine, its secrets once again hidden away, its guardians pacified for now. The journey had changed them, each step into the darkness a test of their courage, each discovery a piece of a larger, darker puzzle that was the old Whitaker mine. But as they walked away, their shadows stretching out behind them, they knew the story was far from over. The quiet peace they now felt was fragile, a thin veil over the profound and eerie truths they had uncovered beneath the earth. As they walked away, the early morning light did little to dispel the chill that clung to their spines, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks just out of sight. Emma, Sarah, and Thomas trudged through the dewy grass, their bodies weary but minds racing from the night's revelations. The weight of their discovery was immense, knowing that they had touched upon ancient forces, tampered with the fabric of the mystical and the cursed. Each step away from the mine felt like a temporary retreat from a battle that was destined to resurface. "Will it hold?" Emma asked, breaking the silence that had settled among them. Thomas glanced back toward the dark entrance of the mine, now just a small shadow in the landscape as dawn's light spread. "For now, yes. But such forces are never truly at rest. We've bought some time, but others may come, driven by curiosity or greed." Sarah nodded in agreement, her eyes somber. "And the guardian, it's still down there, isn't it?" "It is," Thomas confirmed. "Bound to protect the secrets, perhaps now more wary of intruders. We've managed to calm its fury, but we've also alerted it to our presence, our capabilities. It will be watchful." The implications hung heavily in the air as they reached the edge of the woods that bordered the town. The normalcy of the waking world seemed surreal after the night they had endured. Lights flickered on in distant houses, the mundane stirrings of a day beginning, oblivious to the supernatural brinkmanship that had played out beneath the ground. As they parted ways, a sense of camaraderie and a shared burden remained. They exchanged looks of understanding, a silent agreement that their journey into the mine was a secret they would carry together. Emma returned to her home, the old Whitaker house, feeling its familiarity and its eerie echoes more acutely than ever. As she stepped inside, the first rays of the sun streaming through the windows cast long shadows across the floor, and the house creaked softly, settling with age or perhaps with something more. She made her way to her room, her every sense heightened, half expecting whispers in the corners or a chill breeze through closed windows. But there was only silence, a silence that was thick with unspoken words and unrevealed secrets. That night, as Emma lay in bed, the events replayed in her mind like a film, each detail vivid and haunting. The cries of the guardian, the whispers of the lost children, the feel of ancient texts beneath her fingers, it all felt like a dream, yet it was all too real. As sleep finally claimed her, a part of her mind remained alert, listening for any sign that the peace they had achieved was just an illusion. And in the depths of the night, a faint whisper echoed through the halls of the Whittaker house, a whisper that could have been the wind, or perhaps something else, a reminder that some doors, once opened, and not so easily closed. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, and the moon cast a silvery glow over the town of Greywood. The old mine lay silent, its secrets once again shrouded in darkness. But the earth remembered, and the darkness was patient. The story of the guardian and the depths below was far from over, but for now, it was contained, a chapter concluded in the ongoing saga of the Whittaker legacy, waiting, always waiting, for the next curious soul to dare the shadows. And so, the cycle would continue, the balance between light and dark, knowledge and ignorance, courage and fear, a delicate dance on the edge of an abyss, where the truest horrors lay not in the darkness itself, but in the hearts of those who dared to challenge it.